Can you imagine what it's like to lose absolutely everything? And when I say everything, I'm not just talking about material things. I'm talking about losing your identity, your dignity, your reason for being. What would you do if one day you woke up homeless, without family, without purpose, with nothing but dirty clothes on your back and the memories of a hell that no one around you can comprehend? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover goes far beyond a simple story of overcoming adversity. It's about how the deepest abyss can become the foundation for the greatest transformation in a lifetime. Detroit, winter of 2015, 3 in the morning. Beneath the Interstate 75 bridge, where the icy wind cut like blades and the deafening roar of trucks never stopped, a man huddled against the cold concrete. His name was John Mitchell, 34 years old, a former captain in the United States Army. The torn military backpack beside him was all that remained of a lifetime. Inside, only some filthy clothes, a crumpled family photo that he could no longer look at without feeling unbearable pain in his chest, and a medal of honor that now seemed like a cruel joke of fate. John's face was marked by an uneven, dirty beard. His sunken eyes held an emptiness that went far beyond physical exhaustion. It was the look of someone who had nothing left to lose, or worse, someone who had already lost everything and now merely existed, breathing by pure biological reflex. Have you ever felt invisible, as if the world kept turning and you were just a ghost watching from the outside? That's exactly what John felt every night on that bridge, while people drove by just a few meters away, returning to their warm homes, their families, their normal lives. Just 3 years earlier, this same man was in Kandahar, leading platoons, making life-saving decisions, proudly carrying the American flag on his chest. He was a decorated hero, respected by his comrades, feared by his enemies. But now he was just another veteran thrown onto the streets of Detroit, another number in the alarming statistics of soldiers who return from war and fail to reintegrate into society. Another face forgotten by the same nation that once promised never to leave him behind. That particular night, with the temperature nearing 10 degrees Celsius, John didn't know if he would see the sunrise, and part of him didn't even care anymore. PTSD transformed every engine sound into an explosion, every shadow into a threat, every moment of silence into a mental battlefield. The empty bottles around him told the story of someone who tried to drown their pain in every way possible. The tremors weren't just from the cold, they were from withdrawal, fear, and the survivor's guilt that had haunted him since he saw his best friends die at his hands. But do you know what makes this story absolutely extraordinary? What you're about to discover might surprise you, and honestly, it might even change the way you see your own battles, because John Mitchell, that broken man under that bridge, that soldier whom war had turned into human wreckage, was about to undergo one of the most impressive transformations you've ever seen. And the most incredible thing, he had no idea about it on that freezing night. When the sun rose over Detroit that morning, something was different. It wasn't yet visible, it didn't yet have form, but a small spark, tiny, almost imperceptible, was beginning to shine amidst the ashes of a life broken. And that spark was about to turn into a flame that would illuminate not only John's life, but the lives of thousands of people around the world. Before I continue telling you what happened that day that changed everything, I need to pause here with you, because I know you're watching this now, and maybe, in some way, this story is touching something inside you. Maybe you know someone who has gone through dark times like this. Maybe you yourself have been in a place where it seemed impossible to start over, where the pain was so great that everything lost its meaning. Have you ever been through that? Have you ever felt completely lost, not knowing where to go? If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. It could be a word, a phrase, a memory, whatever comes to your heart. Because you see, this channel isn't just mine. It exists because of you, because of people who believe that stories like John's need to be told, that real transformations deserve to be celebrated and shared. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content that truly matters, that touches the soul, that makes us believe again in the human capacity for rebirth. And look, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I wholeheartedly invite you to subscribe now. It's not just a click, it's you saying, yes, I want to be part of this community. I want to keep seeing stories that remind me of what really matters in life. It's you investing in your own hope, believing that it's worthwhile to meet people who have transformed pain into purpose. And if this story is already moving you, leave a like, because that helps YouTube show this content to more people who need to hear exactly this message today. Now let me tell you what happened on that cold dawn in Detroit, because what you're about to discover will show you who John Mitchell really was before everything fell apart. And believe me, knowing the man behind that wreckage makes this transformation even more impactful, even more impossible in human eyes. Because John wasn't just another soldier, he had a story, a family, dreams. Because John wasn't just another soldier, he had a history, a family, dreams that now seemed so distant from that broken man under the bridge. And for you to understand the magnitude of what happened to him, for you to truly feel the weight of this transformation, I need to take you back in time. I need to show you who John Mitchell was before everything fell apart. Imagine a small town in rural Texas called Midland. You know those towns where everyone knows each other, where Friday nights are sacred because of high school football, where values are simple yet profound. That's where John grew up. The son of a mechanic and an elementary school teacher, he was the typical American kid you see in movies, but real without romanticization. At 22, John was the captain of the Midland High School football team, wearing the number 12 jersey with a pride that came from within. He wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the fastest, but he was a natural leader. The kind of guy everyone followed not out of fear, but out of respect. His teammates would say years later that John had something special, an ability to make you believe you were capable of more than you imagined. He led by example, arriving before everyone else at practice, leaving last, always lifting his teammates up when they made mistakes. And in games, he was pure determination. The whole city went to the stadium on Friday nights, and when John stepped onto the field, there was a different energy in the air. But John wasn't just about football. He had a girlfriend named Sarah, that classic childhood love story everyone roots for. They met in 7th grade when Sarah fell in the school hallway, and John was the only one who stopped to help her pick up her books. From then on, they were inseparable. They sat together in the movie theater every Saturday, shared milkshakes at the Main Street diner, and made plans to one day have a house with a porch where they could watch the Texas sunset together. Simple plans, but real ones. Sarah wore John's team jacket to games, and he wore a bracelet she had made with blue and white beads, the school colors. John's dreams were honest and straightforward. He wanted to finish college, maybe get a partial scholarship to play football at a community college, study business administration, return to Midland and start his own business. Perhaps a mechanic shop like his father's, or maybe something related to sports. He wanted to marry Sarah, have children, be a good father, a good husband, a man of his word. He wanted to make his parents proud. They were dreams without glamour, without excessive ambition, but they had something that many dreams lack. They were genuine. And then came September 11th, 2001. John had just turned 18. He was a senior in high school when he saw those towers falling on the television in his history class. Something changed in him that day. It wasn't a loud or dramatic change. It was quiet, but profound. That night, While all of America processed the horror of what had happened, John stayed up late talking to his father in the garage while the old man repaired an engine. "Dad, I need to do something," John said with that tone of certainty that only young people have. His father stopped what he was doing, wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, and looked his son in the eyes. "Son, I know what you're thinking. And if it's what I think it is, you have my support. But don't make this decision in anger. Make it with your heart." John wasn't angry. He was filled with something more powerful, conviction. He felt he had an obligation to protect everything he loved. His city, his family, Sarah, that simple but free way of life that was the essence of America for him. 3 months later, in February 2002, John was at the Army recruiting office in Odessa, the neighboring city. He was wearing his best shirt, the same one he wore to Sunday Mass, and carried with him an unwavering determination. The recruiter, a veteran sergeant with scars that told stories, looked at the bright-eyed boy and asked, "Son, are you sure about what you're doing? This isn't a movie, this is real, this is blood, this is sacrifice." John didn't hesitate for a second. "Sir, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm defending my country." The news spread through Midland like wildfire. The reaction was mixed, pride mingled with concern. His mother, Mary, wept for 3 days straight, but never tried to stop him. She knew her son well enough to know that when he made a decision, it was with his whole heart. His father squeezed his hand tightly and simply said, "You're a Mitchell. Mitchells don't give up, no matter how hard it gets." And Sarah held back tears in front of him, but when she was alone, she let fear consume her chest. She knew she was about to lose the boy she knew, transforming him into someone else. The day of departure was one of those moments frozen in time. It was a June morning in 2002, the Texas sun already blazing at 7 o'clock. At Midland Airport, a small crowd gathered to say goodbye to John and 2 other boys from the city who had also enlisted. There were American flags waving. There were hugs too tight. There were words choked with emotion. John's mother held her son's face in her hands and said, "You'll come back to me, you hear? You promise you'll come back." John promised. How could he know that the person who would return would be just a shadow of the boy who was leaving? Sarah kissed him, as if it were the last time. And in a way, it was. She kissed him with the urgency of someone trying to hold on to every second, every sensation, every detail in their memory. She touched his face, ran her fingers through his hair, which was already cut quite short by military standards, and whispered in his ear, "I'll wait for you. No matter how long it takes, I'll be here when you come back." He held her hand until the very last possible second, until the final call for boarding forced them to part. At the boarding gate, John turned one last time. His father stood at attention, tears streaming down his tanned, wrinkled face. His mother was embracing Sarah, the 2 of them crying together. Friends, teachers, neighbors, everyone was there. And John, in his immaculate military uniform, backpack on his back, and eyes shining with youthful determination, returned his father's salute. At that moment, he was the personification of the American hero, young, brave, willing to sacrifice everything for the greater good. Basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia was intense, but John thrived. He discovered that the qualities that made him a good football captain, leadership, resilience, the ability to motivate others, were the same qualities that made him a good soldier. Within months, he was among the best in his class. His superiors noticed. There was something about that boy from Texas that stood out. It wasn't just physical strength or technical skill, it was character. It was integrity. It was the ability to remain calm when everything around him was falling apart. In March 2003, John was sent to Iraq for the first time. He was only 20 years old. The war had officially begun, and America was sending its sons to a conflict whose duration no one knew. John wrote letters to Sarah every week, letters full of forced optimism, promises that he would soon be home, descriptions of desert landscapes that attempted to hide the horror of what he actually saw every day. Sarah kept each letter in a shoebox under her bed and reread them all on nights when the longing hurt too much. In the first few months, John was still that boy from Midland. He played with his platoon mates, sent smiling photos next to tanks, kept his faith and hope alive. But war has a peculiar way of eroding innocence, of tearing away layer by layer everything you thought you knew about yourself, about the world, about good and evil. And John was about to discover this in the most brutal way possible. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this is where John's story takes a turn that few dare to speak openly about. This is where we begin to understand not only what happened to him, but what happens to thousands of soldiers who go to war and return transformed into something unrecognizable. The deepest scars are not the ones you can see. They are the invisible ones, the ones that bleed from within, the ones that no one can heal with bandages or surgery. The first time John saw a comrade die was in July 2003, 3 months after arriving in Iraq. They were on a routine patrol operation in Baghdad, something they had done dozens of times. The day was absurdly hot, over 50 degrees Celsius, and everyone was exhausted. David Rodriguez, a 19-year-old from San Diego who loved to talk about surfing and always said that when he returned, he would open a surf school for underprivileged children, was walking alongside John when he stepped on an improvised explosive device. The explosion was so powerful that John was thrown 3 meters backward. When the dust settled, when the ringing in his ears subsided, John staggered to his feet and saw David, or what was left of David. I won't go into graphic detail because that's not the point, but what matters is that John rushed to him, tried to help, yelled for medical assistance, did everything he could. But David died in his arms in less than 2 minutes, looking at John with that look that asked, "Why me?" as life slipped from his body. John held his hand until the end, whispering, "You're going to be okay, man, you're going to be okay," even knowing it was a lie. That night, John couldn't sleep. He sat in the corner of his tent, staring blankly, trying to process what he had just witnessed. He was 20 years old. At 20, he should have been worried about college exams, which beer to buy for the weekend party, how to impress Sarah. Not about cleaning a friend's blood from his hands, not about writing a letter to David's family, explaining that he died doing what he loved, because that was a lie. David died because he was on the wrong side of a war that no one could properly explain anymore. But that was only the first death. Over the next 2 years, John saw 11 comrades die. 11, each with a name, a story, a family waiting at home. Marcus Thompson, who had a 2-year-old son he never saw because he had enlisted before the baby was born. James O'Connor, who collected bad jokes and always managed to make everyone laugh, even in the worst situations. Carlos Mendez, who spoke of his grandmother in New Mexico with so much love that he made everyone miss their own grandmothers. John was in direct combat 47 times. 47 times he had to make split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. 47 times he had to shoot first, ask questions later, follow orders, trust his training, switch off the human part of his brain, and act purely in survival mode. And each time, a little piece of who he was died with him. The boy from Midland, who believed in good, who saw the world in black and white, who was sure he was on the right side of history, that boy was being slowly murdered by the raw reality of war. The nightmares began in his 2nd year of service. John would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, sweating profusely, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would explode. He dreamed of David, of Marcus, of James, of all the faces he would never see again. He dreamed of Iraqi children staring at him in fear, of explosions, of blood, of sand entering his lungs. He dreamed he was back in Midland, but when he got home, everyone was dead. He dreamed Sarah no longer recognized him. And worst of all, sometimes he would wake up and not know where he was, not know if he was in Iraq or Texas, not know if he was awake or still dreaming. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, isn't something that appears overnight like a cold. It creeps in slowly, silently, like smoke seeping through a crack in a door. First come the nightmares, then comes hypervigilance, that constant state of alert where every sound is a potential threat, every shadow is an enemy, every sudden movement sends your entire body into combat mode. You can't relax, you can't switch off. John began having flashbacks. In the middle of a normal conversation, something, a smell, a sound, a word, would instantly transport him back to Iraq. He was there again, in the middle of the crossfire, seeing David explode, feeling the heat of the explosion, the taste of sand and blood in his mouth. These episodes lasted seconds, but felt like hours. And when he returned to reality, John was completely disoriented, trembling, sometimes crying uncontrollably. Survivor's guilt is perhaps the cruelest aspect of PTSD. John constantly asked himself, why did I survive and they didn't? What did I do differently? Could I have saved David if I had been faster? What if I had insisted that Marcus not go on that mission? What if I had seen the sniper before James? These questions swirled in his mind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without rest, without respite. It was a mental torture that never stopped. John changed. The letters to Sarah became shorter, colder, more distant. He stopped joking with his teammates. He stopped smiling in photos. He stopped talking about the future because he could no longer imagine one. The only future he saw was more war, more death, more pain. He began to emotionally detach himself from everything and everyone as a defense mechanism. If you don't care, it doesn't hurt when you lose. In 2005, after 3 years of service and 2 tour extensions he hadn't requested but was forced to accept, John was finally sent back home. He was 23 years old. He had left as a bright-eyed boy full of dreams and was returning as a man with empty eyes filled with nightmares. The transformation was physically visible. He was thinner, had scars on his face and arms, and had that distant look of someone who had seen too much. But the real transformation was internal, and that no one could see by looking at him. He returned alive, but a part of him never left that battlefield. A part of him was still there in the desert, holding David's hand as he died, making impossible decisions under crossfire, carrying the weight of 11 lives that ended while his own continued. And that part would never return. It was buried in the sands of Iraq, along with all the innocence and all the faith that John once had. The return to Midland should have been a happy moment, a celebration, the happy ending everyone hoped for. The city organized a reception for him and the other returning veterans. There were banners, balloons, American flags everywhere, speeches about honor and sacrifice, handshakes and pats on the back from people saying, "Thank you for your service," as if those words could somehow compensate for everything he had missed there. But John could barely be present in that moment. He was physically there, smiling mechanically, waving, saying the right things at the right times, but mentally, he was thousands of miles away. The noise of the celebratory fireworks made him jump and assume a fighting stance. The smell of barbecue reminded him of things he'd rather forget. The crowd made him feel claustrophobic and anxious. He just wanted to go home, lock the door, and be alone in the dark and silence. Sarah was there, of course. She had waited 3 years for this moment. She had remained faithful, writing letters, sending packages with cookies and photos, keeping every memento of the two of them. When she saw him getting off the military bus in the City Hall parking lot, her heart almost burst with joy. She ran to him and hugged him with all her might, crying, laughing, saying, "You're back, you're back. I knew you would come back." But the man she was embracing wasn't the boy who had left. John returned the hug, but it was mechanical, without real emotion. When Sarah kissed him, he felt nothing. It was as if that part of him that knew how to love, that knew how to feel joy, that knew how to connect with another human being, had died somewhere between Baghdad and Fallujah. He tried to pretend, tried to match her excitement, but Sarah noticed immediately. She saw in his eyes that the John she loved was no longer there. In the first few weeks, they tried. They really tried. Sarah took John everywhere they used to go. The diner on Main Street, the lake where they picnicked, the soccer field where he played. She talked about the plans they had made, how good it would be to start over, how they could finally build the life they had always dreamed of. But John just nodded, gave short answers, seemed to be there but not really there at the same time. At night, the nightmares were worse than in Iraq. John would wake up screaming, sometimes violently. Once, he almost accidentally hurt Sarah because he woke up thinking he was being attacked. He sweated so much that the bed was soaked. Sarah tried to comfort him, but he pushed her away, saying everything was fine, that she should go back to sleep. He would go to the living room and stay awake until dawn, sitting on the sofa, staring into nothingness, smoking cigarette after cigarette, desperately trying not to fall back asleep, because sleeping meant dreaming, and dreaming meant going back to hell. John tried to find a job. He went to 23 interviews in 3 months, mechanic shop, construction store, security company, anything. But in every interview, the same thing happened. Either the employers saw war veteran on the resume and were afraid to hire someone who might be unstable, or John had an episode during the interview, a flashback, a moment of dissociation, an exaggerated reaction to some sound or movement that ended with him hurriedly leaving the place. Frustration grew, anger grew, the feeling of worthlessness grew. John had led platoons, made life or death decisions, survived situations that would kill most people, and now he couldn't even hold down a simple job in his hometown. He couldn't even have a normal conversation with his girlfriend without becoming emotionally detached. He couldn't even sleep a full night without waking up screaming. What kind of man had he become? He started drinking. At first, it was just a beer or two at night to relax, to ease the tension in his shoulders, to try to sleep without dreaming. Then it was 3, 4, 5 beers. Then he moved on to whiskey. Then he moved on to straight vodka. He drank until he felt nothing anymore, until the weight of survivor's guilt became a little lighter, until the images of the dead faces became a little more blurred in his memory. Sarah begged him to stop. His mother cried in front of him, pleading for help. His father tried to talk to him man to man, but John pushed everyone away. He was convinced that no one could understand what he was going through. How could they? They weren't there. They didn't see what he saw. They didn't do what he had to do. They didn't carry 11 deaths on their conscience. They didn't wake up every night with the smell of blood in their nostrils and the taste of sand in their mouths. Isolation was the next step. John stopped answering calls. He stopped leaving the house. He stayed in the back room of his parents' house where he was living, drinking, sleeping, waking up, drinking some more. He lost 15 kilos in 2 months. He stopped shaving, showering regularly, changing his clothes. When his parents tried to talk to him, he would explode in anger or simply not respond. Sarah endured it for 11 months. 11 months trying to rescue a man who didn't want to be rescued. Trying to love someone who could no longer love anyone, including himself. One night in April 2006, she went to John's parents' house, entered the room where he lay on the bed, drunk and without having showered for days, and said with tears streaming down her face, "I love you, John. I will always love you. But I can't do this anymore. I can't watch you destroy yourself and do nothing." She left the blue and white beaded bracelet, the one he wore before going to war, on the dresser and left. John didn't even get out of bed. He just heard the door close, heard her car start and drive away, and then he grabbed the bottle of vodka and drank until he passed out. Deep down, he knew she was right. He knew he had become a burden to everyone around him, but he couldn't stop. He didn't know how to stop. 3 months later, his parents did what every parent is afraid to do, but sometimes needs to. They gave him an ultimatum. John had 2 options: seek professional help immediately or leave home. They could no longer watch their son destroy his life under their roof. It was a brutal, painful decision that tore pieces from Mary and old Mitchell's hearts, but they saw no other alternative. John chose to leave, not because he wanted to, but because in his mind, distorted by alcohol and trauma, he believed he was doing everyone a favor. He grabbed his old military backpack, put in the few things he had, took the Medal of Honor from a drawer he hadn't looked at in months, and left home without looking back. His mother cried so much that day that she became ill. His father punched the garage wall so hard, he broke his hand. John was 24 years old and officially homeless. He had some money from military benefits, but he spent it all on alcohol. He slept in the old car his father had given him when he returned from the war, parking in different places every night to avoid drawing attention. He stopped calling his parents, stopped answering messages from old friends who were still trying to stay in touch. He simply disappeared from the lives of everyone who knew him. In 6 months, the money ran out. The car was towed because he couldn't pay the insurance. And suddenly, John was literally on the streets. He wandered from city to city in Texas for a few months, sleeping in shelters when he could find a place, sleeping outdoors when he couldn't. He sold his blood for a few dollars, begged on street corners, accepted food from churches. Every day, he sank deeper. And then in the winter of 2008, 3 years after returning from the war, John decided to go to Detroit. There was no logical reason for choosing Detroit. Maybe it was because it was far enough from Texas to be sure no one would find him. Or maybe it was because he had heard that Detroit had many shelters for veterans. Or maybe he simply didn't care anymore where he was going. He arrived in Detroit in November when winter was beginning to show its sharp claws. He had only the clothes on his back, a tattered backpack, and a bottle of cheap whiskey. And that's how he ended up under the Interstate 75 bridge, just another veteran, forgotten by the very nation he had risked everything to protect. The descent into hell had taken exactly 18 months since he left his parents' house. 18 months to transform a war hero into a homeless man, destroyed by alcohol and trauma. But what nobody knew, not John, nor his family who didn't know where he was, nor Sarah who still thought of him every night before going to sleep, nor the passers-by who walked past him without looking, was that rock bottom would be exactly the starting point for something extraordinary. Because sometimes you have to lose absolutely everything to discover what really matters. You have to be so broken that there's nothing left to lose to finally have the courage to rebuild. And on the morning of January 3rd, 2009, something happened that changed everything. Comment below. The turning point has arrived. And on the morning of January 3rd, 2009, John woke up under that bridge in Detroit with something different. It wasn't hope yet. It was too early to call it hope. It was more like a discomfort, an unease that didn't come from the cold or hunger, but from something deeper. He looked at his trembling hands, at the empty bottle beside him, at his torn backpack, and for the first time in years, a question flashed through his mind like lightning. Is this how it's going to end? Everything I've been through, everything I've survived, all my brothers who died, was it just so I could freeze to death under a bridge? He stood up, unsteady, his body aching, his head throbbing, but there was something different in his gaze. It was still empty, still lost, but there was a small spark, tiny, almost imperceptible, beginning to shine. He walked to a veterans shelter a few blocks away, a place he'd been to a few times, but never stayed because he couldn't be around other veterans without feeling survivors' guilt consume everything. And it was there, drinking weak coffee from a styrofoam cup, that he met Marcus Sullivan. Not the Marcus who died in Iraq. This was a different Marcus, a 62-year-old Vietnam veteran with eyes that carried the same weight as John's. Marcus was volunteering at the shelter, serving coffee, handing out blankets and talking to the veterans who arrived seeking refuge. Marcus looked at John and saw something no one else had seen in years. He saw beyond the broken man. He saw the soldier that still existed somewhere inside. He sat beside John, said nothing for a few minutes, just stood there present. And then in a calm, non-judgmental voice, he said, "I know where you are, son. I've been exactly where you are now. And I'm going to tell you something no one told me when I needed to hear it. The fact that you're alive means you still have a mission to fulfill. You're not finished yet." John looked at the old man with scars on his face, and tears began to stream down his face. They were the first genuine tears he had shed since returning from the war. They weren't tears of anger or frustration. They were tears of someone who had finally been seen, truly seen, by another human being. "I don't know how to go back," John whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't know if there's anything left in me worth saving." Marcus placed his hand on John's shoulder and said something that would change the course of his entire life. "Son, you don't need to know how to get back. You just need to take the first step, and then the next, and then the next. And one day you'll look back and realize you've built a bridge back to life. But it starts with one step. Today. Now. Are you willing to take that step?" And John, with trembling hands, his body craving more drinks, his mind screaming that it wasn't worth trying, with all the demons of the past telling him to give up, did something he hadn't done in years. He said yes. He accepted the outstretched hand. He took the first step. The next few months were the hardest of John's life, and that says a lot for someone who survived a war zone. Marcus helped him get into a veterans rehabilitation program. John spent 90 days in a clinic, detoxing, undergoing therapy, confronting all the trauma he had buried under layers of alcohol and denial. There were relapses. There were nights when he wanted to give up. There were moments when he was sure he never would make it. But Marcus was always there, and little by little, other veterans who were on the same path were there too. There was a brotherhood there, an understanding that didn't need words. They had seen hell. They knew the weight of impossible decisions. They understood the nightmares, the flashbacks, the survivor's guilt. And together, one day at a time, they began to rebuild their lives. When John completed the program and left the clinic in May 2009, he made a decision that would define the rest of his life. If he had survived hell for any reason, that reason was to help other veterans find their way back. He had no money, no home, no resources, but he had a mission. And for the first time in years, he had purpose. He started small. Every day he returned to the shelter where he met Marcus and offered to help. He served coffee, distributed blankets, but mostly he talked. He told his story unfiltered, without shame, without hiding the ugly parts. He spoke about the bridge, about drinking, about losing everything, about wanting to give up. And in doing so, he gave other veterans permission to do the same. John landed a humble job at a mechanic's shop. The skills he'd learned from his father finally found a use. The shop owner, also a veteran, gave John a chance despite knowing his past. The pay was low, but honest. John rented a tiny room in a boarding house, nothing luxurious, but it was his. For the first time in years, he had an address. Meanwhile, his mission grew. From 3 veterans, he helped find shelter and treatment. It went to 10, then 20, then 50. John used his free time to connect homeless veterans with resources they didn't even know existed: housing programs, medical benefits, support groups, jobs. He became a bridge between the system and the veterans the system had abandoned. In 2011, 2 years after that lackluster coffee with Marcus, John officially founded a small, non-profit organization called Bridges Home. It was an obvious reference to the bridge where he had nearly died, but also a symbol of what he was building, bridges back to life for veterans who were lost. In the beginning, it was just him and 2 other volunteers operating from a tiny office that barely fit 3 chairs. They had no funding, doing everything with their own resources and occasional donations. But there was something money can't buy: authenticity. John wasn't doing top-down charity. He was walking side by side with each veteran because he had been exactly where they were. John's story began to spread. First, there was a small article in a local Detroit newspaper about a veteran who turned his own tragedy into a mission. Then came a report on state television. And then, in 2013, a major national network aired a special about homeless veterans, and John's story was featured. The impact was explosive. Donations began pouring in from all over the country. Veterans from other states started reaching out for help. Businesses offered partnerships. In 2 years, Bridges Home grew from 3 volunteers in a tiny office to an organization with 15 full-time employees and over 100 volunteers. The numbers tell a powerful story. In 7 years, Bridges Home has reintegrated more than 500 veterans into society. It has facilitated more than 200 mental health treatments. It has secured jobs for 289 veterans. It has reconnected 156 veterans with their families. And it has saved, literally saved, at least 47 veteran lives who were in the same place John was on that bridge in 2009. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. The numbers don't tell the story of James, who was homeless for 8 years and now works as a veterans counselor. The numbers don't tell the story of Patricia, who served in Afghanistan and returned with severe PTSD and is now studying psychology to help other veterans. The numbers don't tell the story of Robert, who was literally 1 night away from committing suicide when he met John, and is now an active volunteer at Bridges Home, helping others on the same path. In 2016, John was invited to speak to Congress about the homeless veterans crisis in America. The man who used to sleep under a bridge was now in Washington, D.C. in a suit, addressing members of Congress about public policies for veterans. When he stepped onto the podium, there was a heavy moment of silence as he looked out at the room full of powerful people. And then he began. "My name is John Mitchell. I'm an Army veteran. I served 3 years in Iraq, and in January 2009, I was sleeping under a bridge in Detroit, ravaged by alcohol, PTSD, survivor's guilt, believing my life had no value anymore. If someone had told me that freezing morning that 7 years later I would be here talking to you, I would have laughed or cried, probably both." He spoke for 20 minutes. He didn't use notes. He didn't memorize a speech. He simply told his truth, raw and honest. When he finished, there was a 3-second silence that seemed like an eternity. And then the entire room rose in a standing ovation. Congressmen, Democrats and Republicans, who rarely agreed on anything, were all on their feet, applauding, many with tears in their eyes. That speech led to real changes in veteran support policies. More funding for mental health programs, more resources for housing, streamlined processes for veterans to access benefits. John Mitchell, the man America had forgotten, was now changing the system that had failed him and thousands of others. But perhaps the most profound transformation wasn't external, but internal. John reconnected with his family. In 2014, he returned to Midland for the first time in almost 10 years. His father, now with completely white hair, hugged him and cried like a child. His mother held his face in her hands and said the exact same words she had said at the airport in 2002. "You came back to me. I knew you would." He also reunited with Sarah. She had married and had 2 children, but when she learned that John was in town, she made a point of seeing him. They had coffee at the same Main Street diner they used to go to as teenagers. It was strange at first, heavy with history and pain, but there was also something healing about it. Sarah looked at John and said, "I always knew there was something special about you. It took time, but you found it. I'm proud of who you've become." John began serious therapy, not just for emergencies, but as a long-term commitment. He made peace with his past. He hasn't forgotten and will never forget the 11 teammates he lost. But he learned to carry that pain in a way that didn't destroy him. He learned that honoring their memory didn't mean dying with them, but living in a way that made each day count for all the days they didn't have. In 2017, John met Amanda, a psychologist who worked with veterans and had volunteered at Bridges' home. She knew his story, knew his demons, and chose to love him anyway, or perhaps precisely because of that. They married in 2018 in a small ceremony in Detroit, with Marcus Sullivan serving as best man and over 50 veterans John had helped present as guests. And do you know what the most powerful moment of that wedding was? When John was there, at the altar, holding Amanda's hands, he looked to the side and saw in the front row his father, his mother Sarah with her family Marcus, all the veterans who had become his new family. And for the first time in 13 years, since that day he saw David die in his arms, John felt something he thought he would never feel again: peace. Nightmares still appear sometimes. PTSD doesn't magically disappear. There are difficult days. There are moments when the temptation to drink still whispers in his ear. But the difference now is that John has the tools to deal with it. He has a support network. He has purpose. And above all, he is certain that his life matters, that each day is a chance to make a difference, to be the person he needed to be when he was on that bridge. In 2020, John published a book telling his story. It's called From Bridge to Purpose. It was a bestseller for 12 weeks. All profits go to Bridges' home. The book received thousands of letters from veterans saying that those pages saved their lives, that finally someone had put into words what they felt but couldn't express. Today, in 2024, John is 42 years old. Bridges' home has expanded to 12 states and helped more than 2,000 veterans. John continues to go to the office every day, not because he needs to, but because he wants to. Because every veteran he helps get off the streets, every life he helps rebuild, is a way of honoring David, Marcus, James, Carlos, and all the others who didn't have the chance to go home. But this story isn't just about John Mitchell. It's not just about veterans. It's about something much bigger and much more universal. It's about the fact that no matter how low you fall, no matter how broken you are, no matter how many times you've failed or given up, there's always the possibility of starting over. There's always the chance to transform your greatest pain into your greatest purpose. John didn't win despite the war. He didn't win despite the trauma, the drinking, sleeping under a bridge. In a strange and profound way, he won through all of that. Because it was precisely that suffering, that descent into the abyss, that experience of losing absolutely everything, that prepared him for the mission he was destined to fulfill. He wouldn't have the empathy, the authenticity, the strength he has today if he hadn't gone through all of that. And that brings us to the most important question of all. What does this mean to you? Because I know that most of you watching this aren't war veterans. Most haven't been through battlefields in Iraq or Afghanistan. But everyone here has fought their own battles. Everyone has had their own breaking point. That moment when it seemed like you couldn't go on anymore, that there was no way out, that it was over. Perhaps your bridge is a seemingly endless depression. Perhaps it's an addiction you can't shake. Perhaps it's a childhood trauma that still haunts you. Perhaps it's a devastating loss that broke your heart into 1,000 pieces. Perhaps it's bankruptcy, divorce, illness, or rejection that changed everything. Everyone has their own version of the bridge. And John's story reminds us of something fundamental, The fact that you are here, watching this, breathing, alive, means that you still have a mission. You are not finished yet. And perhaps, just perhaps, that pain you carry, that suffering you have endured, that scar you try to hide, perhaps all of this is preparing you for something greater than you imagine. Perhaps your greatest wound is destined to become your greatest gift to the world. John Mitchell didn't wake up one day and become a hero. He woke up one day and decided to take a step. And then another, and then another. He relapsed, he failed, he doubted, but he kept taking steps. And look where he is now. If he managed to rebuild everything from absolute zero, facing demons that most of us will never know, what does that say about what's possible for you? So I'll leave you with the same question Marcus asked John in that shelter in Detroit. Are you willing to take the first step? Today. Now. Not tomorrow, not on Monday, not when you feel ready. Because you'll never feel ready. But now. What step can you take today, however small, toward rebuilding your life? And look, if you've made it this far to the end of this story, I know something resonated with you. Comment below. I'm with you until the end, because I want to know that you're on this journey too, that you understood the message, that you're not alone. And if this story touched you in any way, leave a like, because that helps this type of content reach more people who need to hear exactly this message today. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, I invite you to subscribe now. Here we bring real stories of transformation, of people who went through hell and found a purpose on the other side. It's not about cheap motivation or catchy phrases. It's about raw truth, genuine hope, and the human capacity for rebirth that lies within each of us. And look, there's a video over here about another incredible transformation story that will complement everything you just saw. Click and continue with me there, because this journey doesn't end here. See you in the next one.